and welcome to Built on Air, a podcast and video series about all things Airtable. I'm your host, Zoe Vanderplu, and I'd like to thank our sponsor, OpenSide. Visit openside.com for products and services that will take your Airtable to the next level. Use promo code BuiltOnAir, one word, all caps, for a one-time $20 credit off of any purchase. Today I'm chatting with Sam Koster, co-founder of Butterscotch Shenanigans, an independent video game studio based in St. Louis, Missouri. Butterscotch is probably best known for their 2016 release Crashlands, and they're releasing their newest game, Levelhead, in April 2019. Levelhead is a level-building platformer where players become designers and can share what they've built with the world. Butterscotch's origin story is unique. It was created by three brothers, Sam, Seth, and Adam, who all had a wealth of unrelated formal education, psychology, financial planning, and a PhD in molecular biology, respectively, but minimal industry experience. Sam talks about their evolution as a studio, how they're learning to run a better business, and how their creative process flows. They originally started using Airtable to keep track of their PR contacts, but it has become so ubiquitous in the office now, it's almost a running joke. Sam demos an Airtable base for us that he built to develop the structure and flow of their newest game, Levelhead, down to the music tracks chosen for each level. And as a quick bonus, since I love Airtable bases that solve boring personal problems, Sam shows us a base punnily called the WhereHouse, where he used his phone to easily catalog all the random items in his basement so he'd never have to double buy superglue ever again. Check out the show notes for more things Levelhead, available April 2019 on Steam, and head over to BuiltOnAir.com for more things Airtable.
Again, it's a simple idea, but mainly it's because of what you said about the being able to bucket certain content and then just pull that repeatedly up. You can see what's happening here. So these are all the levels on just sort of going down the list here, and they're laid out in basically what is the linear order. There is some branching in the campaign, but it's not as important as the linear sort of progression. So there's 65 levels in here currently, and essentially what I needed to do was each of these levels is actually introducing a new piece of content, right?
Cool.
And so I have to make sure that I know, so this column is, what am I teaching in this level, right? What am I reinforcing for the player? And basically plotting the levels out like this allowed me to both get the structure for even just knowing how to design it. Like designing without constraints is absolutely brutal.
It's terrible. Yeah, you need the box so you can decide if you want to move out of it or not.
Exactly. So the first thing I did was I made these first 8 levels, and I said, okay, what's like the first thing the player needs to learn how to do? They need to know how to grab stuff, get the package, and then get to the end and like exactly what those mechanics look like. Okay. So you just kind of keep on building from that. So I was able to essentially just write out, almost like pseudocode, and then I could pop back in and then actually build the levels based on this stuff. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to the rest of the base here, you can see that I also checked for pacing. So over here we have type. So essentially, if the level lends itself more toward like puzzling behaviors or platforming or like more of a rush or combat, then I can essentially try to tie some of these high level themes to each level to make sure that as you go through 65 levels, that there's a good mix of this different type of content. You'll see there's certain levels that were inserted in here. These ones that are empty are ones that I put in after putting all this thematic information and realizing, oh, I have a gap here where I have 3 rush levels in a row. I need something that's more chilled out, for example.
Right.
And then when you come over here, here's the music thing I was talking about. So we have a bunch of these really fun music tracks that our team called Fat Bar did for us. And the problem, like, these are the names of all the different tracks, but again, like you want to introduce players to music in a way that makes sense and has some rhyme to it, some rhyme and reason to it. And so this way I didn't necessarily double up on too many songs too much because players die a lot in this game. It's a very challenging platformer. So you don't want them to hear just one song for 40 minutes straight because you accidentally put it in 4 levels back to back to back.
Right.
So there's that. And then the trickier part comes down to the unlocks. So the way Levelhead works, like I mentioned, that players get to edit and build their own levels, right? So the issue is that we have to unlock that content for them slowly, right? So you don't just get to hop into the editor with every single one of the like 100-something tools available to you.
Right.
So playing through the campaign actually unlocks that content. So essentially what I did here was I paired this with the badges over here, and these badges are essentially those content unlocks. And then each of these is an item from the game, right? So we have GR18, the goal, backdrop, environment elements, that sort of thing. And then I could actually plan and track these things, and then also tie, which levels are attached to them from this side over here
Cool.
to see how many levels lead up to certain pieces. Now, the interesting thing, so I built this whole thing in Airtable, applied it in game, and then we played through it, and it was fantastic for sort of getting that like mental structure figured out. And then now that I've sort of done this large amount of this sort of foundational work, we built additional tooling inside of the game actually to make it easier to essentially have this concept, which was built out almost in a prototype way in Airtable, baked into the game. So there's design tools that I can use in the game to easily do this sort of thing. So I can show you actually translates then into the game. So can you see this?
Let's see. I am still seeing the Airtable base.
Okay, 1 second. I'll switch to this one. So can you see this okay?
Let's see. It's black. I think it might take a second. Yeah. And yeah, if it's just yes, I see it.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So this is the like the main sort of menu of the game actually. So it's designed to feel like a little space station point and click adventure sort of thing. So if we go into the campaign, I take the spaceship out to space here. And this is actually how all of this ends up rendering out, right? So you're the player in this little ship, and you can travel between the different level orbs, which are the different levels that you actually saw in that Airtable base. And if I inspect here, you can see just how big this is. These are where those unlocks are coming from.
Cool.
You can see this is essentially how that planned content ends up being broken out in the scope of this. And you can see why I need this, because this gets gigantic. There's
right. It's quite large.
So much information here. And again, like, yeah, you can kind of slap it together, but the reality is that even just a cursory amount of planning can make it so that the experience for the player at the end of the day is way, way better, right? It can be more exciting, and you can have better ideas of how to pace content and stuff like that. So yeah, that's essentially how all this has translated into the game itself.
I love it. Very cool. Oh my gosh. I just want to like stare at the nebula for like 5 minutes.
Good. I'm glad. That's good.
So then are you really kind of the only person in your team that works in Airtable, or will your brothers also kind of look, is this like your realm, or how do you guys kind of collaborate if you do?
Yeah. So all of us do Airtable stuff. So again, because it's just such a broadly applicable tool, it's the sort of thing that makes it very easy to put everything from, we used to use it actually for asset management. For example, I would be making art, and then my brother Seth would have to implement it in the game, right? It has to get in there somehow. When we were tracking in the early stages, we used to track actually through Airtable which assets were sort of pending, which ones were ready to go. And we've used it for a bunch of different purposes. And oftentimes what it allows us to do is, in a really interesting way, kind of build up the mental structures needed to figure out how to do something really effectively, whether that remains in Airtable, or in the case of the art implementation, we're like, oh, we should actually be using something like Trello to track all of our work.
Right. Yeah. You're like, this is a little bit too much.
Exactly. But it's a nice sort of it's such a good tool because it allows for that sort of mental flexibility and exploring a space in a really productive way. And we've used it for just all sorts of stuff in-house.
Right. Yeah. And I like your point earlier about how it kind of, if you spend just a little bit of time to organize it, it's really easy to come back to like thinking, I have a ton of bases for like projects I got really excited about for like one night, and then I'm like, okay, that's enough. But it is, when you're ready to kind of come back to that, everything's just kind of laid out nicely for you. And you can kind of set up your future self to kind of dig back into it really easily. So I guess tell us a little bit more then about, I'm just curious about kind of the whole, you showed us that Airtable with the levels, but in terms of you guys are kind of talking about how you have this kind of general model that you're using to build games. Tell us just a little bit more about like how that process works for the three of you, especially having 3 co-founders. I imagine there can be like a lot of voices in the room sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we've grown up to 5 people total now too. So
oh, nice.
Yeah, Seth and I are actually the primary sort of leads on all the new game related content. And what that generally looks like is, uh, so it was actually funny when Adam joined the studio, the oldest brother joined the studio. We were worried because Seth and I somehow always come at everything from opposite ends, and so we were like, "Oh my god, this is going to be bad because now there's going to be two people on one side, right?" No, Adam just has his own opinion that's contrary to everything we're doing too, and so we find that there's a lot of richness in having that dialogue, right? So it's very rare actually that someone will have an idea and then that it'll just go sort of straight in.
Hmm.
More so, someone will have an idea and then it'll get sort of refined through a lively discussion over like just 15 minutes or so, and then it'll go in. And so, a lot of the way that the game gets built is on a highly iterative sort of cycle. So we don't. A lot of game studios do large amounts of pre-production and planning and that sort of thing. And I
Hmm.
think it's more and more important as your team gets bigger, of course, because you got to kind of line up, the whole navy to get everybody in the same direction.
Right.
But in our case, being so small, it's much easier to simply find the core of an idea. So in the case of Levelhead, it was, oh, we want people to be able to build their own levels. That was basically it. And then just start building from there and then iterating. And we try to do a lot of what we call, listening to the game. So you just build a lot for a few days or so and then sit down and play it. And the game will sort of tell you what it wants you to do, essentially, what the next piece is. And
Right.
so the richness then comes from arguing with one another, and then taking those steps back every so often to say, okay, the game can only talk in the language that it currently has. So what other entirely new things do we need to sort of put in here that could add another whole sort of.
Right. Yeah, I like that sort of concept of like listening to the game. Like it, in some ways, when you create something, it does kind of tell you what it wants. And then also, what a great kind of combination where you have the game, right, as sort of a voice, and then all of you guys as well, which tend to have differing opinions. So really excited to check out Levelhead once it launches.
Yeah.
Um, and then we do have just, more fun Airtable things.
Oh yeah.
We do have a sort of, I guess, sillier use case for
Mhm.
Airtable, more about not, butterscotch oriented
It's
things,
a
but
personal thing entirely.
yes, human organization. So tell us a little bit about your warehouse
Well,
space.
yeah. So the story is the problem I had was I went to I think Home Depot and I bought some super glue. And then I came downstairs to go into my basement to go glue this thing that had broken. And I look over on the shelf and there's some super glue that I just hadn't noticed when I had checked, right? And I thought there has got to be a better way. And then, of course, we had just started using Airtable a ton in the studio. And the joke around the studio is we always whisper the name Airtable when that's sort of the tool you should use. So someone just goes Airtable, and then you're like, oh, okay, right, that's the thing for me. And so, yeah, I was just sort of complaining about this, and I thought, in my head, Airtable, and went along my basement and marked out. Basically, I had like a sort of a shelving unit down there, and so I marked it out almost like you would in a warehouse. So there's three different rows, and then there's A through I think F or something like that. We'll see it in the warehouse. And then essentially what I did was I cataloged everything that was in each one of those cubic feet of positions, took pictures of it, and made a little intro thing so you can actually do it on your phone too. And that's how I
Nice.
share it. So I'll share that right now. You can see what this looks like. Um, so it's this is again simple idea, but because of how easy it is to use Airtable, it's really easy. So locations, so these are those sort of locked or those lockdown possible locations. So the X's are these two big bins I have, the Y's are these other big bins, and then you can see just all this stuff. And I was tired of not knowing what stuff I had in my own
Right.
house. Right? Um, and they're all useful things, but they're things that you use like once or twice a year sometimes, right? Where it's like, oh, I
Right.
don't need to. I'm not constantly hanging things up, and so you can forget about those different pieces. And so I just went through and did all this, and then even applied it to the upstairs because I have a bunch of electronics equipment and stuff like that. And so Pokemon. I need to know where my Pokemon game is.
Yes.
Never need to
If
find
you
it.
need it, you really need it.
Super important. And each one has a picture on it too. So if I don't know what the heck it is, then I can just sort of load it up. Oh, there's this Nintendo DS I have. Excellent. And check out everything from there. So this is the sort of thing where it just made it a lot easier to, know if I had stuff in my house. And then before I go usually to the hardware store, I can do sort of a sanity check and just search my base. Just say,
Right.
I already
Yeah.
have this thing. But
No,
I
I've
probably
done that before where I'm like, I know we have like these hooks or this glue or like sandpaper, it's somewhere. And then I'll just, I'm like, I have no idea where it is. I'll just buy more. And then like, of course, just because this is how things work, like the next day I'll be getting something else for the project and then I'll find the thing I just bought. It's like, Zoe, like get it together. So how do you use, are you just accessing the Airtable app on your phone then to kind of tour your warehouse?
Yeah, so I built I made that form view thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just for adding it in, but yeah, you can look at the table then through your phone, but mainly it's for recording, and I did all my cell phone, right? So had the app there, and then made that little form, and then enlisted the help of my wife, and I was like, we have to go document the warehouse. And she's like, why do you like this? And I was like, amazing. And so yeah, we just kind of went down there and took care of everything.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely need to do something like that for myself. Yeah, no, I love learning about people's personal projects for Airtable because almost every single one I'm like, I should be using it for this. I should be using it for that. And I do use it for some personal things, but it's just there's so many other things that you can track. Yeah, and I especially with the whole like Marie Kondo like tidying up KonMari thing. It's like the whole idea: keep only what sparks joy, and you'll know where everything is in its place. But also like I feel like Marie Kondo like doesn't deal with like power tools or things very often, like random, and it's so I'm just organizing things in Airtable, and I think it is really easy to kind of just take pictures directly on your phone too, which is really nice. Because like I hate having to like take it on my phone and then get it on the computer and then upload, and it's so annoying.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the interesting thing about having a tool that does have so much flexibility to it is that, so I like to think about it like there's ways of communicating even with yourself, right? So if you build skills in writing or in drawing, then it helps you just sort of figure out stuff, right? You can think through your problems, you can do that sort of thing. And so there's tools that we've gotten in the studio that end up being interesting extensions of that, where if you get good at the tool, it's just like programming, right? If you get good at whatever the programming language is, you start seeing ways to use it and seeing opportunities to use it, and that sort of powers up your ability to think and to organize information, that sort of thing. And so Airtable is one of those rare tools, I think, where it's broad enough in its capability, but also deep enough that, yeah, you can start applying sort of the Airtable way, onto your basement, for example.
Yeah. That's really so true. And, just kind of, Airtable really, I think for people, who aren't familiar with, programming and databases and stuff, just Airtable's visual ability to link things and stuff, it really does kind of open up a different part of your brain where you can start thinking about like data and relations in ways that are actually incredibly intuitive, but you can't really touch in the physical world, right? Like I can't have this cup be in two places at once physically, but maybe when I organize my belongings into locations and categories, it would need to be in both things. So yeah, it is kind of a great, you make a great point about how it really can, like, it's a way of life. Airtable,
yeah, I mean, it can really open up, I think, opportunities exactly because of that, because it becomes it's an interesting sort of visual databasing tool, right?
And I even liked kind of in your both of your bases, right? Just using kind of that like single select drop down or multi-select. It's really easy, like you said, when you're looking through, these songs, for example, I have too many. You don't even really need to look at the names. You can just tell by the colors if there's a good mix or not. So it's a really like kind of great just visual indicator. And yeah, it's really exciting to kind of see how you guys are using it just in your development, and then also for stupid human stuff, which I also love. And yeah, I think it's Airtable, like you said.
Exactly.
I'm gonna have to start like maybe whispering that like at the end of every episode or something. So tell us, I mean, of course, you have Levelhead release coming up, But what is kind of next for Butterscotch beyond that? Are you guys, working? I mean, I guess obviously you're sort of in the trenches right now, but kind of looking ahead, what's going on in the
Yeah.
Butterscotch world?
So Levelhead is going into, it's called early access. And so basically what that means is the game's not done yet. It's in
Hmm.
really highly polished, almost what you call like a beta stage. And the goal of that is to be able to develop the game alongside the community that comes to play it, right? Which we're really excited about. So we'll be doing Levelhead stuff probably for like 6 to 12 more months, honestly.
Hmm.
Got a lot more things to build. I got a lot more ideas. There's a backlog that's, bigger than my entire body, but written in text. It's like that's how many ideas we have ready to go in this thing. So we'll be doing that for a bit, but a big part of our sort of future exploration is how do we push, our studio forward to enable like multiple projects simultaneously.
Hmm.
Or how do we scale up the team a little bit more? How do we, again, sort of get a little bit more business oriented in terms of how we think about production and things like that. And then beyond that, we've been talking about like basically just really lightweight conversations about what sort of project we'd like to do next. So no idea what that's going to be honest. But for now, it's just sort of pushing out all the materials for what we do currently have in our suite of entertainment products for everybody, and then our own podcast, which is like a weekly thing where we whispered Airtable essentially, I think for 7 weeks in a row to our poor listeners, and growing those things because we love that connection with the people who actually play our games, right?
Right.
Sort of a big part of our core strategy and what we think is kind of special about being an independent studio as opposed to like one of the huge AAAs or something like that.
Hmm.
We really like to talk to our user base. So
Very cool. And to go along with that, tell our listeners where they can go online to check out more of your stuff, and find out where and when Levelhead is going to be released.
yeah, so you can go to bscotch.net to see all of our games and see updates about everything. And also, if you just Google Butterscotch Games or Butterscotch Shenanigans, then you'll find every single thing you could possibly want to find.
Awesome. Well, Sam, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. It was very enjoyable. And now I have a new creepy, whispery tagline that I can fill awkward silences with.
Excellent.
So
I'm glad to have gifted that over to you.
yeah, and best of luck on the release. And we'll be keeping an eye on you and your games.
Cool. Thank you.